My business is a tour guide business. I show people around Cambridge, the city I just love. Name of my business, where did it come from? It's called Guide and Peak. When I first set up the business, I was chatting to my wife and I said, we have to come up with a really good name. And we thought of Cambridge Tours, touring of Cambridge, walking tours of Cambridge. They weren't quite ringing the bell. And it was my wife who just actually said, Guide and Peak. And what a thought, what a great play on words. So I'm guiding you around Cambridge and I'm giving you a peek into the little quirky bits that you might not see. So the name just stuck, we loved it, and we went with it. It's Cambridge based, yes. I run it from my kitchen table. Yeah, it all set up there. I sit with my little laptop and I've got my website designed, and I come up with some ideas, produce a few brochures, chat to people. Luckily now I'm beginning to get noticed and I'm getting quite a few calls being asked to do bespoke tours, i.e. just those specialist tours, looking after clients for, say, a whole day. I try and concentrate on small groups. I prefer to have small groups. That means that people can ask questions, and believe me, when you're going around chatting to people, you immediately make friends. I probably ask as many questions about them as they ask about me. It's just a lovely way to show people around, the small intimate group. So I also try and put everything into a context of world history, or the history of Britain as was going on. So I tend to make them more history based. For some reason, well, I hope it's because they like my tours, people are coming and asking me to just do specialised tours for them. What makes a good tour guide? That's a very good question. Obviously you've got to be dashingly handsome. I failed on that point, but I like to have a sense of humour and get people to laugh. Life is about laughing and enjoying yourself. There are a few tricks that you need to know, obviously. You must always make sure that you have a group of people. I know it's a small group, but you always have to make sure that they're safe. There's lots of hazards in Cambridge. There's cyclists, there's bollards, there's uneven pavements. There's also other groups of people in the way, so you just make sure that they're comfortable and safe. Today we're going to go on a little tour. I'm going to take you around the medieval city centre of Cambridge. We're going to visit some cobbled streets, some little back streets, little back alleyways. I'm going to take you to places that you wouldn't normally see. Cambridge is famous for its being a university, as you know, and this happened because in 1209 there was some problems going on in Oxford, and some dons turned up in the tranquil market town of Cambridge and set up a university at this site, at the church we have here, Great St Mary's. Not this particular church, this was built much later in the 1500s, but the university started here, and this was the centre of the town. And in fact today you'll see a little plaque that says on that church, this is how we mark the centre of the city. So, remember I mentioned that King's was founded by Henry VI and finished off by Henry VIII. 5 kings were involved. Interestingly enough, one of those kings nearly had the college destroyed. So founded by Henry VI, Henry was overthrown by Edward IV. And Edward IV thought about, as an act of revenge against the House of Lancaster, of destroying the college. Luckily he didn't. He just taxed it heavily instead. Again, as you may not know, but Henry regained power in the War of the Roses and then was finally overthrown by Edward. When Edward died, his brother Richard took over, and Richard didn't last very long because he was eventually overthrown by Henry VII. We see Henry VII there. Henry Tudor he became Henry VII. And then his son, Henry VIII, we see a nice slim model of Henry VIII there. When we meet him later, he might be a little bit more portly.
Sorry.
Behind me you can see this rather modern edifice. We've got a very medieval town, we've got a very modern edifice here. This is a clock. It was installed, designed and built by a man called John Taylor. You might not have heard of John Taylor, but I can guarantee that you've used one of his products this morning, because John Taylor was the man who invented the thermostat switch for an electric kettle. He also patented it. So, as you can imagine, his engineering company was quite successful. When he went into semi-retirement, he took up his hobby of horology, the building of clocks. This clock you see here is completely unique. It took about 4 years from inception to its final installation in 2008, when it was opened by Professor Stephen Hawking. About 200 people were involved in the design, the engineering, etc. And because of this, over this period, the clock is very expensive. It cost over £1 million. Here we have St Benet's Church. St Benet's Church is the oldest building in Cambridge that is still in use. There's a church on this site that dates back from 1020. This is before the Norman invasion of Britain, so it's a Saxon church. The tower that you see there is the original. There would have been some additions to the church, obviously through time. What I like about this church, and it's a rare example, is that if you look up at the tower, you will see some little round holes. Now, have you any idea what they may be used for? Some people say it's for defence of the church, shooting arrows out, etc. They're quite close, because it is actually for the defence of the church, but not in a way that you may think, because these round holes were there to attract owls. Because owls eat mice, and mice eat churches. They eat the hymn books, the Bibles, the woodwork, and they're particularly fond of the fat that is used to keep the bell ropes soft. So, owls, a form of defence for the church. We don't have owls there anymore, we just have pigeons in them now, but pigeons don't understand the rules, and they're just squatting, really. The laboratories where some very famous things happen. Have some communal speech stamping.